And I'm right now constantly covering Cantoncoin and XRP. So with that in mind, now let's just take a look first at Cantoncoin, and then we'll roll over into XRP.
Of course, right? They never end. So that's what makes life fun. Even with all the great things I talked about, I mean, there's the reality of implementation. If you look at all our member firms, you look at any fund manager, right? Like there's a lot of legacy systems and infrastructure out there. So we've been very thoughtful about that. There's a couple of things that we know to be true. Not everything will tokenize, right? And not everything will get tokenized at the same pace and rate. So the old and the new have to coexist together for a long period of time. And this is where DTCC's mission has been to ensure that we treat the new assets with the same quality of care as we do with the old assets, right? So ensure investor protection, corporate actions, proxy voting, all that good stuff. We also got to figure out how we facilitate our clients and our participants to be able to merge the old and the new together. And that's critical for risk management purposes, liquidity. You fast forward a little bit, we do anticipate a world where now today, I'm sure if I ask you, you have a brokerage account, you have a bank account, you've got this account and that account. In the future, you'll have one wallet that will host all that activity. That sounds simple because when we try to explain a wallet to somebody, we say, yeah, it's like an account. But it really isn't, right? It's a lot of different things that are in the wallet. And all the systems down here, all the systems within middle and back offices are all coded to run on accounts. And now suddenly we're going, ta-da, there's a new thing. It's a wallet. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done by the industry to figure out how they can lean on these new rails and push forward. So so that's going to alternate a lot of the trading models, the operating models, the distribution models. Because what you're going to see is the confluence, if you will, of all asset classes, right? So you're going to see it's going to be really hard to distinguish anymore between crypto and traditional assets, right? Because we're using the same rails. And the work that people like us, Financial Market Infrastructure, DTCC, is we're pushing forward to building these rails. We're building that infrastructure. So to use an end user, it shouldn't matter, right? It shouldn't matter what rails we use. What you want to know is your assets are safe, what is the value of the assets, and that you've got full legal ownership of those assets. And that's the path we're working towards.
Alrighty, everybody, what is going on? Welcome back to another CYPRX video breakdown. In today's video, I want to go over the fundamental backdrop, what is taking place in the total cryptocurrency market right now, as we're seeing a huge wipeout, a leverage across the board. And then I want to go into some updated technical analysis on both Canton and XRP towards the end of today's video breakdown. So make sure that you stick around for that, as we have been delivering some of the most accurate technical analysis in the ecosystem as of recent. And I hope that you guys have really enjoyed those in-depth breakdowns, keeping you on the loop with what is taking place. Now, I started off today's video breakdown with the representative Nadine from the DTCC to give you guys a little bit of optimism, right? Even though that we are seeing a huge market downturn right now, that is verbal confirmation from a recent NASDAQ, or what is this, New York Stock Exchange interview that took place just the other day with Nadine from the DTCC, where she said, we are building out the rails for this new financial system. And she specifically mentioned crypto rails, right? So just to give you guys a future looking perspective, this is still all taking shape. She mentioned a lengthy implementation phase. This was never going to happen overnight. She mentioned and talked about how all of your assets will be in a wallet. Not everything will be tokenized. But again, just keeping you guys forward looking with some research. This particular video breakdown only has like 70 views. So of course, nobody's heard this. Everybody's freaking out thinking that crypto is dead. That is the farthest thing from the truth. There is just a mass shakeout of retail leverage. Did you really think that these institutions that are about to get regulatory clarity to come into the space for the first time ever in crypto history, after 17 years of this space being alive, we're going to allow all the over-leveraged retail traders that have existed in this space between then and now, or when crypto became around till now, that institutions were going to pump their bags, right? Think about all the over-leveraged traders that exist from 2022 to 2023, 24, 25, and now even in some cases in 2026. The institutions were not going to allow those over leveraged traders to gain significant amounts of wealth by pumping the market up from where it was at 4.24 trillion dollars back in 2025. So just keep that in mind. We are going through a massive shakeout, and it is my goal here at CYPRX to really get you guys to understand why price moves and how it moves, so that you stop reacting emotionally and you start making informed decision. As my followers here at CYPRX, we have been focusing on that valuable information. Hopefully you guys watched the previous video breakdown to this one, going over the Fed wash situation. So we'll touch on that here in today's video breakdown before we get into the technical analysis. Mark over on X, I'm not too entirely sure how to say his last name, Mark Chadwicks, posted this, and I completely agree. He said, this shakeout is ripping the Band-Aid off. Painful now, but necessary for what's about to happen. Crypto is the future, but too many chains have spread liquidity too thin. Thousands of networks competing for the same use cases, and investor capital is simply not sustainable. There has to be a purge, and we're likely in the midst of it. No, we are in the midst of it 110%. Why now? Because we're in the pre-regulation phase. Weak projects have to die, liquidity will concentrate, and survivors will emerge. What comes out of the other side is familiar. Think the dot-com crash. Not thousands, but 5 to 10 dominant multi-trillion-dollar winners. The real game is identifying who survives before regulation locks the landscape. And so this is a phenomenal post, because this is 110% something that we all knew we were going to have to live through. And up until this point, we have been in a speculative trading environment where the vast majority of activity and volume and volatility in the crypto ecosystem has been driven by speculative leverage trading. Even on networks that we all assume are going to be utilized and adopted by traditional financial institutions, have up until this point just been driven by speculative trading. So even assets like XLM, HBAR, XRP, so on and so forth, you could name a whole list of them, are all being tested and trialed right now, because the underlying utility of the network has not been adopted at scale by these large financial institutions. And what has predominantly been driven price action over the past consecutive couple of years has, again, been speculative retail trading. Now, I just want to show you guys why it's so important to be a part of a private community like the one here that we've built at CYPRX. I'm going to take you guys over to our private Zoom call playlist. This is a Zoom call recording from back on October 12th, 2025. Think about the time frame. That was literally months ago, when the market was at, well above, let's say, $3.8 trillion, just 2 days after we saw the October 10th massive shakeout liquidation. And just listen to what I said to the private community months ago in comparison to what Mark just recently posted now. Take a second here and listen. Maturity. Think about it. We need it like this to happen, because we're still in a phase where the decentralized platforms that we're on, the DEXs that we're operating on, the protocols that we're using, this is all still just a fucking test, y'all. So when we can see wallets survive, when we can see projects survive, we are in the era of figuring out what's going to survive, right? So that's a message that I gave to the CYPRX community to prepare them for what was about to come. Now, coming over here to the technical analysis side of things, just to again show you guys that we warned our community well in advance of a much deeper correction. We broke this down in our community Zoom recording from October 26, 2025. And this is, again, not to say that we told you so or anything. We're just showing you all here that at CYPRX, we provide real value and education when it matters most. So take a second and listen. This is where we discussed to our private community months ago to be prepared for a further market downturn. Then we're likely to see, on the higher time frame, continued sell pressure take place, and we're likely to see discounted prices at some predetermined area over to the left-hand side. And so very quickly on that Zoom call, we were just discussing the fundamental backdrop. We were talking about all the things weighing on market sentiment at that point in time, which leads me now over to this post. I said, just in, Bitcoin falls under 71,000. Now, over 10 days in advance, well, actually, collectively speaking, over 2 weeks in advance. This is a post back from the 19th of January. I mentioned to you guys, what would the altcoin market look like if Bitcoin dropped to 70 to 65,000? Prepare, right? I said here in this post, checkmate, all layer ones across the board being speculatively traded and over leveraged, not being utilized for their underlying utility by large organizations at scale right now, because this could change in the future. But right now, none of these chains or networks are being utilized at scale by large institutions. Just remember, as a long-term investor, mass capitulation is usually a good time to buy. The crypto fear and greed index below 12 usually doesn't last more than a few weeks. The total cryptocurrency market cap below $2.3 trillion right before we are about to see regulatory clarity is a massive opportunity. Let the over-leveraged retail traders who hoped institutional money would pump their bags get liquidated and position yourself in projects that have real underlying utility. And if you can earn yield and compound it daily on projects you believe in while you wait for all of this uncertainty to end, that would also be something to consider. Now, again, that's why I played the Nadine video for you guys at the very beginning and onset of today's breakdown from the DTCC. She went on to confirm that they are building out the crypto rails for all of TradFi to converge with the DeFi ecosystem. Just to give you guys a little bit of an optimistic outlook, remember, she said that just a couple of days ago on an interview with the New York Stock Exchange. Now, that leads me over to here, mass capitulation. We are seeing that in the articles to this day. For example, Reuters just put out the article just the other day. This is directly from Reuters, and look at what they're saying. Markets fear a hawk with Warsh. The latest rout in cryptocurrencies, which has come hard and fast, was triggered, analysts say, by the nomination of Kevin Warsh as the next Federal Reserve chair, due to the expectations he could shrink the Fed balance sheet. Hopefully, you guys have been paying attention, because over at CYPRX, we mentioned real education when it matters most. Even Reuters is covering these things, but again, no one peels back the curtain and actually explains in detail why this is happening, what's taking place. So hopefully you guys have watched the previous video breakdown. We had a forum inside the CYPRX community where I broke down all of this in detail as a whole lesson to the private community members. And in yesterday's video upload, I went over that lesson for you guys in detail. So I'm really hoping that you guys have enjoyed that educational backdrop, so that way you actually understand in the headlines what's going on. Because again, Reuters just touches on this in a few tiny paragraphs on their website, but they don't actually peel back the curtains and tell you all why in detail this environment is not good for risk assets. So if you didn't check that video out, go watch the one previous to this upload. Nonetheless, back to this mention of mass capitulation. Okay, before we get into the technical analysis, we're about to roll over into that in just 1 second on both Canton and XRP. Here you can see another article from Reuters. It specifically says, overall pessimism about crypto is growing. Then over here, it mentions concerns are being raised around the crypto miners and whether we could be looked at forced liquidations. I highlighted that. And then down here, it mentions our view on crypto has always been that it should be never more than a very small portion of the overall portfolio. However, it is also an asset class that is heavily owned, particularly by retail investors. Think of that comment right there. Forced liquidations owned primarily by retail investors. Remember, we are on the verge of experiencing mass granular adoption by these financial institutions. And anybody in their right mind knew that they were not going to allow over-leveraged retail traders that have been in the market since 2022, 2023, 2024, and so on, in leveraged positions, ride this wave to Valhalla with 20x, 30x, 40x leverage on their Bitcoin, Ethereum, and XRP positions, or Solana, or whatever layer one altcoin they're intraday trading. All right. So this is necessary. This pullback, this mass liquidation that we're currently living through and experiencing, this reset, if you want to call it that, is necessary, because what is going to rise from the ashes? We are going to see underlying digital assets and networks that are actually going to get adopted by these financial institutions rise from the ashes. Mark my words, when the market does recover, it'll likely be altcoins on networks that are actually adopted and integrated by these large organizations, enterprises, and financial institutions alike. They will likely be the top performers whenever the market actually does recover. That leads me over to some technical analysis updates for you guys. You guys have been waiting. Thank you all so patiently for waiting. Now let's get into the updates. Just a couple of days ago, we gave you guys some updates on XRP. Target levels have come into fruition. Again, if you guys want access to these accurate levels well in advance before the levels are hit, our institutional software never misses. You guys could try it out for a month over in the CYPRX Discord. Again, if you guys don't find it of value to you, you can always cancel your subscription. Most people that come in the CYPRX Discord stay. We've had community members in our community for 4 years plus. Why? Because they see the value that the community brings. And these are the most accurate levels that retail traders have access to days in advance via our institutional software. With that being said, on XRP, we had a buy dark pool highlighted between $1.39 and 74 cents. And in this particular video breakdown days ago, I said to you guys that $1.39 was next on our radar on XRP. If we come over to Cantoncoin's price action and we take a look at what I was calling out on Cantoncoin, and we just take a brief look at the update, I had mentioned to you guys that if we did not break above the 18194 psychological level, that we were likely to see a drop below 17 cents and a pullback start to formulate down into that 14,801 cent psychological level. With that in mind, now taking a look at the updated price action, the targets on XRP have been met to the absolute freaking pip. You guys can see that we dropped straight down into $1.39. I mentioned to you guys that if $1.39 does not hold as support, that's going to open the door for a deeper retracement. We'll go over that in just 1 second. Over on Cantoncoin's price action, same thing. I had mentioned to you guys that if we did not break bullish above the 18194 or the 18,194 cent psychological level, that we were likely to start to see a deeper retracement down into the 14 cent region, which is currently happening at time of recording. The full pullback has not taken place yet, but I have a firm belief that if the market sentiment continues to dwindle away, we see a continued risk-off backdrop, those lower targets on Canton are likely to come into fruition. I really truly hope that you guys have enjoyed the logical and realistic technical analysis here at CYPRX. I know sometimes it can seem slightly arrogant because we mentioned that our software never misses and it's super accurate, but honest to God, it is, and I wouldn't say that if it wasn't. And I hope that you all are seeing that time and time again in real time via these updates that I constantly give you guys. Remember and keep in mind that if you guys head over to the CYPRX YouTube, you guys have all the last and latest updates via our TA breakdowns playlist. Just go over to the CYPRX YouTube, click playlists, and look for TA breakdowns. Every single time that I do a technical analysis breakdown, I upload it to this playlist. In case you miss it, you guys can always catch up on the latest update here. And I'm right now constantly covering Cantoncoin and XRP. So with that in mind, now let's just take a look first at Cantoncoin and then we'll roll over into XRP. So same analysis, nothing has relatively changed from the last update. We had mentioned that if price cannot hold a sustainable bullish move above the 18,194, we were likely to see sellers overpower buyers. I had drawn on the base of this last bullish move and mentioned how many times price had revisited and tested it with buyers attempting to defend. As of recent, sellers have overpowered the buyers in this area, and we have started to see a drop down into lower prices. With that in mind, one thing that I'm paying attention to is that on the daily time frame, I have noticed that the 50 moving average crossover does come in slightly below the 14,801 cent psychological level. With that in mind, if price does break below 16.5 cents, that is going to open the door for a deeper pullback down into the 14,801 cent psychological level, which I personally believe is a healthy retracement and correction from this previous bullish move on Cantoncoin. If we were to take a fib from the low up into the high, you can see that a 62 to 66% retracement from this previous bullish move would fall in line with where the 14,801 cent psychological level is met. With that in mind, that is going to be my first bearish target for Cantoncoin, where I will start to facilitate some heavy dollar cost average positions, especially if we can see buyers defend at this level. To the downside, further targets that I'm paying attention to, if we break below the 14,801, have not changed. Next on our radar, we have the 12,257 cent psychological level. If sentiment were to worsen, again, below the 12,257, we also have the 0.9453 on our radar, and a full-blown retracement down into the 0.5800 is also on the table. I hope that you guys have really enjoyed us giving you guys a logical perspective. We were probably one of the only communities out there where everybody has been recently talking about Cantoncoin, but we have been warning people not to buy into the hype, not to buy into the rallies, and we've been giving you guys updated targets and levels to possibly dollar cost average into, or at least pay attention to. Remember, none of this is financial advice. They're levels I am personally paying attention to, but I hope now that in real time you guys are seeing that patience pays, and understanding both fundamentals and institutional technical insights saves you all money, saves you all from buying into hypes and rallies. We had mentioned to you guys not to buy at 19 cents, not to buy at 18 cents, and to wait to see if sellers overpower buyers, to see if we can see a pullback. Now we're seeing that in real time, right? So those are the levels that I'm being mindful of and paying attention to. Right now, 16.5 cents is holding some ground. I'm hoping that we can break beneath that, see sellers overpower buyers, and see a nice dip and pullback down into the 15 to 14.801 cent range. To the upside, if that does not take place and we do see buyers overpower sellers and rekindle some losses, breaking back above the 18,194 and holding it as a support, if we can see that, that is going to open the door for some higher prices. That means that sellers are likely not targeting lows, buyers are likely going to overpower, and we're likely going to start to see sellers liquidated out of their positions above these highs. With that in mind, if we did hold above the 18,194 and we did see sentiment flip back risk on, that opens the door for a 22,582 cent psychological level threshold to be met. Slightly above 22 cents, we also have 26 cents on our radar. We are a stretch away from that. Nonetheless, I do think it is possible once we see the market sentiment recover. For now, I'm paying attention to these discounted levels as the market sentiment is skewed to the downside. As for XRP, I have a very firm belief that this is one of the primary layer ones that is not being utilized for its underlying utility right now, especially via the XRPL. And instead, the vast majority of activity on the XRPL, and instead, the vast majority of activity on XRP is primarily driven by speculative trading, over leveraged retail hype. All the over leveraged retail traders that are leveraging XRP, thinking that it was going to go to $100, putting in leveraged positions, are now getting liquidated as the XRPL is not being utilized by financial institutions yet at scale for its underlying utility. With that in mind, I do have a firm belief that we're likely going to see lower prices on XRP. So what am I keeping on my radar to the downside now that $1.39 has come into fruition? If we cannot see buyers absorb the current sellers that are holding price below $1.39, then what's most likely going to happen is we're likely to see $1.39 act as a resistance, and that is going to open the door for a deeper squeeze down into $1.09 as our next bearish target. Below $1.09, the lowest level target right now that I'm being mindful of on XRP still comes in at anywhere between 91 to 74 cents as possible targets on XRP, where I will definitely start to facilitate some heavy DCA positions at these levels, as we could start to see buyers absorb sellers, reaccumulate, and then start to retrace and rekindle some of the losses. For now, that is a bit of a stretch away. So right now, to the downside, immediately I'm paying attention to $1.09 as the next bearish target. If price can break and see a sustainable hold above $1.39, and we can see buyers absorb the current sellers, we can see sentiment flip back risk on, and we can start to see buyers turn the $1.39 range into a support. We need to see all of these sellers engulfed at about $1.60 before we get optimistic. If we can see that, and we see $1.60 turn back into support, that's likely going to signal that buyers are going to try to make an attempt at attacking some of these highs over here to the left-hand side. That then opens the door for a revisitation of $2.31. I'll pause it right there. I'm sure that we're likely to have an update before then. So to the upside, a break above $1.39, turning it into support, opens the door for a $1.60 recovery. Anything above $1.60 opens the door for $2.31. We'll definitely have an update before those levels come into fruition, but I'll still just show you guys some levels that I have to the upside that I'm being mindful of for possible profit taking on XRP in case we did see any substantiating recovery. $2.56 all the way up until roughly about $3.11 are on my radar to the upside. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed the accuracy. I hope that you guys have enjoyed the level-headedness and you've enjoyed us not projecting any crazy, outrageous, overhyped retail analysis. And we've just been giving you guys level-to-level updates With that being said, if you have been paying attention, do us that favor, smash that thumbs up button. We have noticed that there are over 50% of individuals that watch the CYPRX YouTube that are not subscribed to the channel. So if you're not subscribed, I ask that you pause this video now, do us that favor, make sure that you smash that subscribe button. We do appreciate the love and the support. And as always, many blessings to you guys. Don't forget, you guys have access to all of these institutional insights and levels, both in terms of fundamentals and technical analysis inside the private CYPRX community. Hope to see you guys on the inside. With that being said, I'll see you all in the next video breakdown.